The hard truth. Most people are not your friends. Welcome to Veronica's Journal, where we discuss spirituality, psychology, and mental health. So together we can evolve as a community that's unstoppable. My name is Veronica, and in today's video, I'll be talking about something nobody wants to say out loud. The moment you wake up and realize that most people in your life were never really your friends. And I don't mean that in a bitter way, in a I hate everyone kind of a way. I mean it in that quiet, sobering, almost sacred kind of clarity. Because there comes a point in your healing journey, especially if you have survived narcissistic abuse, trauma bonds, betrayal, where your eyes just open. And once they open and you see, you cannot unsee it. You start replaying conversations. You start noticing patterns. You start remembering how certain people only showed up when it benefited them. You start realizing they only liked access to you. They liked what you provided. They liked how you made them feel. But they did not love you. There's a difference. And if you are an empath or someone who loves deeply, that realization feels like an emotional whiplash. Because you were loyal, you were protective, you were the ride or die. You assumed everyone loved like you did, but most people don't. Most people bond through convenience, through proximity, through usefulness, not depth. And when you stop being useful, when you start setting boundaries, when you stop overgiving, and when you heal, watch how fast the room changes. Watch how the energy shifts. Watch who gets uncomfortable. Because a lot of friendships are built on imbalance. One person overgives, the other overtakes. One person listens, the other vents. One person sacrifices, the other benefits. And the moment the giver stops giving, suddenly they are different. They're cold. They've changed. No, they've just woken up. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people were never your friends. They were attached to your supply, your emotional supply, your loyalty supply, your validation supply, your stability supply. And when you withdraw that supply, even unconsciously, people feel it and they resent it. That's when you start hearing subtle digs, backhanded compliments, energy that feels off. Because you're no longer easy to access, and people don't like losing access. This is especially true if you've been the strong one, the stable one, the wise one. People don't bond with you, they lean on you. And leaning is not quite friendship. Let's go deeper. Real friendship requires mutual vulnerability, mutual accountability, mutual growth. But what happens when you grow and they don't? You outgrow rooms quietly. And the loneliness that follows that realization is heavy because it feels like loss. You look around and think, was any of it even real? And here's the truth. It was real for you. That's why it hurts. But it wasn't always real for them in the same way. Some people are seasonal. Some people are situational. And some people are assignments, not companions. And once you heal, your tolerance drops. You start noticing who gossips about others, who disappears when you're struggling, who only calls when they need something, who feels competitive instead of supportive, who gets uncomfortable when you win. And suddenly your circle gets small. Not because you're antisocial, but because you're aware. Awareness can feel isolating at first, but it's protective. Let me say something controversial a bit. The moment you stop needing validation, you start seeing who was only there to feel superior to you. That one hits hard. Some people keep you around because you make them feel needed, or smarter, or stronger. But once you level up emotionally, they can't relate to you the same way. And instead of rising with you, they drift. Or they subtly try to pull you back down. You'll notice jokes that feel like jabs, advice that feels like discouragement, support that feels conditional, and your body will know before your mind will ever catch up. Because your nervous system remembers, especially if you heal from narcissistic abuse, your radar gets sharp. You don't just listen to words anymore. You feel intentions. And that's when you realize not everyone who's been in your life deserves to go where you're going. They're not going where you're going. And this isn't about becoming paranoid. It's about becoming discerning. There is a difference. Paranoia says, everyone is against me. Discernment says, I see who is aligned and who isn't. Huge difference. When you're healing, you go through a phase where it feels like no one is your friend. And sometimes that's because you're in transition. You're shedding old dynamics. You're shedding trauma bonds disguised as loyalty. You're shedding people who bonded with the wounded version of you. And when the wounded version of you dies, those relationships don't survive. And that doesn't make you heartless. It just makes you evolved. But here's the part no one talks about. Healing can be lonelier than being abused. Because at least when you were overgiving, you felt needed. Now you're self-contained. And self-contained people are intimidating. You're not chasing anymore. You're not begging. You're not explaining yourself 20 times. You're calm. And calm people reveal chaos in others. And that's when you realize something powerful. It's better to have no friends than having fake friends. It's better to walk alone than walk surrounded by people who secretly resent you. It's better to have 2 aligned souls than 10 opportunists. And here's something else. When you stop trauma bonding with people, you stop confusing intensity with connection. Just because you went through something together doesn't mean you're meant to stay together. Shared pain is not the same as shared purpose. Let that sink in. You might have bonded with people over gossip, over complaining, over mutual enemies, over chaos. But once you stop living in chaos, what do you talk about? Silence becomes revealing, and some relationships can't survive peace. That's when you really understand. You were never as surrounded as you thought. And that realization can feel devastating, but it's also freeing. Because once you stop expecting depth from shallow people, you stop being disappointed. You accept people for what they are. Acquaintances, associates, co-workers, neighbors, not confidants. And that shift alone will protect your heart more than anything else. Real friends are rare. They don't compete with you. They don't disappear when you struggle. They don't secretly celebrate your failures. They correct you in private. They defend you in public. They pray for you when you don't even know you need a prayer. And those kinds of people, you might only meet a handful in your lifetime. And that's okay, because depth is rare. And if you're watching this, chances are you're someone who values depth, which means you were probably overestimating other people's capacity. And that's not your fault. You loved from your own standard. But healing teaches you this. Not everyone deserves access to you. Access is earned. Energy is sacred. And loyalty should be mutual. If you're in a season where your circle feels small, don't panic. You're not being punished. You're being refined. This is just the pruning stage. And pruning feels like loss before it feels like growth. But what's coming next will be aligned. Because when you stop forcing connections, you make space for divine connections. And sometimes the lesson isn't no one is your friend. Sometimes the lesson is you were a friend to people who were never meant to stay. There's a difference. Don't let awareness turn into bitterness. Let it turn into boundaries instead. Stay open, not just naive. Stay loving, not just self-sacrificing. Stay kind, not just accessible to everyone. Because the truth isn't that no one is your friend. The truth is that real friendship is sacred. And sacred things are rare. And if you're walking alone right now, no, you're not alone in that. You're just in between chapters. And sometimes that in between space is where you meet yourself. And that relationship, the one with yourself, has to come first. And this brings us to the end of the video. Please give it a thumbs up if this video resonated with you. Share it with one other person and subscribe if you haven't yet. Also, comment down below. I love reading your comments. Bye for now. Until next time, sending you lots and lots of love. Have an amazing day.